Hello, happy Friday, and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for December the 13th, 2024. Friday the 13th, my friend. Experts in the fear of Friday the 13th say 17 to 21 million people in the United States are affected by one of the two different fears associated with the number 13 and Friday the 13th, making it the most feared day and date in history. And at least 10% of those people, 10% of 17 to 21 million people will stay home today. Some of the fear of Friday the 13th has to do with the belief of certain biblical events. Look into that. It's really interesting stuff. Today is also the birthday of the U.S. National Guard, the oldest military establishment in the country, dating back to the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the mid-1600s, eventually becoming the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard that we know of today. And kudos to you and all of those who serve and have served in the National Guard. Military action by Russia is what's topping the news today after it launched another massive attack on Ukraine's energy facilities in several different regions of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky confirming the damage to the country's energy grid, which has been hit multiple times before by Russia. Reuters reporting nearly 100 missile attacks and 200 drone attacks. Russian drone attacks. While Washington responds to this, they are still not responding to the suspicious drones flying around certain sensitive areas of New Jersey, as we discussed yesterday.
They're going to the ocean. They're not pontoons. They're not landing on the water. They're landing on something. We're not being told the truth. They are dealing with the American public like we're stupid.
New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, fresh off the hot seat on Capitol Hill, is in Turkey today, discussing support for the people of Syria, as President Biden had mentioned the other day, as well as discussing another possible ceasefire or continuing the discussion on a ceasefire in Gaza and getting the Hamas hostages freed.
We discussed, I think, the opportunity to finally try to complete the hostage ceasefire agreement, to get the hostages home, to get a ceasefire in place. And what we've seen in the last couple of weeks are more encouraging signs that that is possible.
Did you see him attempting to answer questions on Capitol Hill the other day? Now he's in Turkey. The next month just can't go by fast enough for Antony Blinken. 38 days until Inauguration Day, and the pendulum continues to swing. The tide, if you haven't noticed, continues to slowly turn. In the news today, and if I told you this, 6 months ago, or even 3 months ago, you would have said no way, but Amazon, Jeff Bezos, is donating $1 million to the Trump inauguration. And Meta, which is Facebook, Zuckerberg, announced they're donating $1 million to Trump's inauguration. Now, you may remember Zuckerberg went to Mar-a-Lago. He met with Trump and Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who's been nominated for Secretary of State. I don't know, about what Bezos' deal is, though, right? You remember the whole thing with the Washington Post not endorsing Kamala and saying that nobody cares what newspapers say. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he now lives in Miami, a couple of hours away from Mar-a-Lago. He could have his chauffeur drive him up there or take his helicopter, whatever. Maybe he'll be meeting with Trump soon as well. But Amazon and Facebook donating $1 million each to the inauguration. Let's start it off with Rob Finnerty, host of Finnerty, who is always on the same page as I am.
Democrats thought Donald Trump would be serving time in the new year, but today he's on the cover of Time, and he is having a good time. And it's remarkable how much has shifted in just a month since 11/5. 2 years ago, the Time Person of the Year was President Zelensky of Ukraine. Where's he stack up now? 2 years before that, it was Joe and Kamala. And the year before that, it was Greta Thunberg. This year's runner-up, not surprisingly, Kamala Harris, who they all really wanted. So a lot has changed. And we have a contrast happening in America right now that we've never really had before. One president is trying to convince people that the economy is good, while another president is trying to convince the rest of the world that America is open for business, all by ringing a little bell. Take a look. You can hear them chanting USA, USA, USA. That's on the floor of the stock exchange on Wall Street, just a couple blocks from Ground Zero. And I don't think I've heard a chant like that in Lower Manhattan since 9/11. That means something right there. And we haven't seen a U.S. president ring that bell in 40 years.
We're going to turn the bull loose. Pull it back.
They were chanting Ronnie, President Reagan's nickname. What's happening right now in this country can't be understated. Donald Trump, through sheer force of personality, is bringing America back brick by brick. He just invited the president of China, Xi Jinping, to his inauguration next month, a move that's getting very little attention, but is nothing short of brilliant, and I'll tell you why. Remember those videos of Joe Biden? Every time he met publicly with President Xi, Joe always walked to President Xi. Every time, and it was embarrassing, because in Chinese culture, the other person walks to the person who's dominant. In a neutral setting to shake hands, the person that walks to you is submissive and inferior. Sound and look like Joe Biden? Stuff like that matters, especially in China. Joe Biden, Doug Emhoff, Mayor Pete, Alejandro, Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, not an alpha in the group. And by inviting President Xi to his inauguration, Donald Trump wins either way. If President Xi says no, Trump wins because he's been the first person to extend the olive branch. But if Xi says yes and travels to Washington, it'll be a huge win for all of us. I've said it before, but it's called peace through Trump. That's what's happening right now. And while Donald Trump projects strength, the U.S. government, which is technically still being run by Joe Biden, I guess, has absolutely no idea why hundreds of car-sized drones are suddenly flying over parts of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. And the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, another beta male all the way, says these drones are no threat to Americans. Take a listen.
We don't see any concern for public safety. We had last night 49 sightings. These are apparently as I understand it, very sophisticated. The minute you get eyes on them, they go dark.
Oh, really, Phil? What if one of these drones suddenly loses power and lands on someone's house while they're asleep? Are they coming from the North Pole, Phil? Are they coming from an Iranian Boston whaler anchored just off the coast of New Jersey? Because we've been told that. The truth is, and Phil won't admit this, but he has absolutely no idea what's going on over New Jersey airspace. And just like that Chinese spy balloon that made its way across the entirety of the United States before it was finally shot down, the Biden administration is doing what they've done for the last 4 years, and you know this well. The answer is absolutely nothing. And once again, Joe Biden's inept cabinet appointees are making the case for all of Donald Trump's picks through their sheer daily incompetence.
Certainly I understand why people would be looking at this and being concerned about it. We're concerned about it too, which is why we have the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, my goodness, looking at this. And we're taking it seriously. And we understand that people are concerned. We understand that they got questions. We got questions too. And we're working hard to get the answers to that.
Yeah, John, you guys are supposed to have the answers. We've got the FBI and Homeland Security looking into it. That doesn't make anybody feel better about what's going on. Oh, they've got the FBI and Homeland Security looking into it. Great, John. I'm sure people in New Jersey are going to sleep a lot better knowing that the FBI is on top of it. The same people that raided Mar-a-Lago and lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and didn't investigate cocaine at the White House, they're on top of it.
That's Rob Finnerty, who poses the question that you may be asking right now while our Secretary of Defense is MIA.
If Pete Hegseth were Secretary of Defense right now, do you really think that we'd be entering night number 25 in a row of strange drones flying over America? I'll let you decide at home. But where's our Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin? Why aren't we shooting these things down? who did the media expect Donald Trump to pick for these jobs? Because clearly, the same old, qualified on paper, rank and file fools just aren't cutting it.
Rob Finnerty is the host of Finnerty, as I mentioned, 8 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. This is Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett on Newsmax with Bianca De La Garza.
All right, there's a chance now for real reform. Kash Patel, the new director of the Bureau, we spoke with him exclusively within the past hour. He's saying, I'll be ready day one, smooth transition. But now I guess it's just in the hands of the senators over at the GOP. Your message to them and also for the other folks working on the Hill, what those senators should be doing for President-elect Trump.
President Trump has a clear mandate, ma'am, that the Electoral College, it was just a sea of red across our great country. And for the Senate to deny any of these appointments, their position, I think, would be an injustice to this country. America's fed up. The curtain's off. They know what's going on. We better clean this. This is our one opportunity. Rarely in history do you get another opportunity like America's been given, yet we're given it some reason by God's grace, and I hope we don't blow it, because if we do, we'll never get it back.
You know, people really do sense that. It's a generational change, very well articulated. You had a very strong exchange yesterday. We just played a little bit of it when you were questioning Secretary of State Antony Blinken about the money provided to Afghanistan at the botched withdrawal. You know, so long people have been looking for answers, looking for accountability, and it always seems to be the most elusive thing when it comes to government, Congressman Burchett.
Yes, ma'am. We're compromised, ma'am. Either somebody's in bed literally or figuratively with somebody. Somebody's getting rich off this. He lied to me. He said they weren't getting any money, and then he came back and said, well, it's 1% or something, it's $10 million. And I actually cursed. I owe my daughter another dollar in the swear jar, I guess. But I told him, I said, you know, $10 million maybe isn't a whole H of a lot up here, but it is back in Tennessee, and it should be up here. $10 million they admitted that they're giving to the Taliban. Man, those folks will hate us for free. We don't need to pay them any money. And that's exactly what we're doing. This is a crooked town. People need to wake up and start demanding answers.
Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee on Newsline with Bianca De La Garza. That's at noon. Newsline at noon. Jason Miller, the senior advisor to the Trump-Vance transition team, also spoke with Newsmax.
Jason Miller. Jason, always great to have you here. I like that title as the senior advisor for the transition team. Certainly seems like that transition is going pretty well. Everything coming up Trump, especially today.
It really is. And I don't know what you guys had done today by 9:30 a.m., but Time Person of the Year, check. Open the New York Stock Exchange, check. That's a pretty good day to get things started. But the one other thing that I would point also with regard to the economy and the economic surge and energy behind President Trump's win, this past week we had both the NFIB put out a report saying that small business optimism is through the roof. It's skyrocketing since the election. And also Chuck Robbins from Cisco, head of the Business Roundtable, put out a report saying that CEO confidence and optimism in our economy is skyrocketing through the roof. So you have Main Street and Wall Street both buoyed by President Trump's election. And as we saw today, there were a lot of people excited to see the president down at the stock exchange.
Jason, I would venture to say that maybe Time Magazine, other media outlets haven't always been so kind to President Trump over the years.
That's an understatement.
What has changed all of a sudden? What do you think?
Well, I think part of this is the recognition that President Trump won the popular vote, that he won 312 electoral votes. This race wasn't even close. He so completely dominated the Democrat opposition. I mean, he knocked out literally two different Democrat opponents during this campaign. But I think the other thing, too, is when you look at how President Trump won, you look at the coalitions, the way that he brought in new African-American, Latino-American, Asian-American voters into the party, increased his share with young voters, the way that he put together these union supporters. And so he's completely changed and upended the status quo in American politics. And that's why he has a mandate. I think that's part of the reason why the media has to respect him now. We'll see how long the honeymoon lasts. But they have to respect the mandate that he has to bring about this change to Washington. We have to do something about the ridiculous inflation, the porous border. These are all things he's going to jump into on day one.
want to ask you about this. The president-elect was asked by Time magazine this. Speaking of Kamala Harris, what do you think were her worst mistakes in the campaign? He answered that it was, quote, taking the assignment. I think a lot of people, even Democrats, might agree with him, Jason.
Yeah, the Democrats were a complete disaster this election cycle. But you know what? Seeing how President Trump beat Joe Biden and beat Kamala Harris, I don't know if the Democrats could have put up anyone who's going to stop President Trump from returning to the White House. And Americans saw just what we were missing over this past 4 years with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris being in office. And it had, quite frankly, disastrous results for our country. But that spirit, that optimism, that excitement with President Trump's victory, and now we're only less than 40 days away from the president coming in and being sworn back in as president of the United States, gives everybody that bit of optimism, that bit of hope that their personal finances, their personal safety is going to improve with the president being back in office.
That's Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump Vance transition team. Speaking of the economy and helping people, the transition team announced yesterday that it's considering expanding the SALT write-off. SALT is an acronym for state and local taxes. So if you live in a state that has a state tax and or high taxes, you would certainly benefit from that if it happens. Jason and the transition team also confirming that the president-elect did invite President Xi of China to the inauguration. According to the Associated Press this morning, President Xi sees attending the inauguration as too risky, but a delegation of other Chinese officials is expected to attend in place of President Xi. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, recently seen in photos with Trump, and Argentinian President Javier Milei, who has recently been at Mar-a-Lago as well, has also been invited to the inauguration. And let's shift gears a bit away from politics to the murder case of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Police in San Francisco say they had identified the shooting suspect, Luigi Mangione, and alerted the FBI 4 days before he was eventually arrested in Pennsylvania. An officer in the San Francisco PD Special Victims Unit is said to have tipped off the FBI on December 5th after recognizing Mangione's images that were circulated by the NYPD. This is according to the San Francisco Chronicle. Mangione had actually been on the radar of San Francisco authorities 2 weeks prior to the December 4th shooting of Brian Thompson. Why he was on their radar, we don't know. But here's more on the case from Lidia Curanaj.
It's been hard to reconcile that the killer could be this guy, an Ivy League graduate, UPenn, a guy whose high school classmates voted him as the person with the best pickup lines, a valedictorian, who hails from a prominent, wealthy Italian Catholic family. The world is fascinated with Mangione because he looked and acted like the boy next door. Luigi, he could be your son, your grandson, my nephew, a guy who lived with him just recently, telling CNN that Luigi was a great guy.
He was a very thoughtful person, communicated really well, was friendly, had good relationships with everyone. He was even, in some ways, a bit of a leader. He helped spearhead a book club that we started just so we could, keep those intellectual pursuits alive from back when we were in school.
Investigators now revealing that Luigi's fingerprints match those of the killers at the crime scene. So why would someone as brilliant as Luigi Mangione make such rookie mistakes, leaving behind fingerprints, DNA, lift up his mask, right? Get arrested with the gun, fake IDs, even had a manifesto on him. Was he a social justice warrior infected by the woke mind virus like this UPenn professor with the handle, the Soviet? I mean, let's look at her picture right there. I mean, look at this woman right here. Yes, she's celebrating Mangione as an icon, and apparently she still has her job. You have to ask, was the accused so disgusted by the healthcare system, like police say his manifesto stated, that he felt that violence was the only answer and that he was justified in the murder? I mean, that's what many, including the ladies at The View, seem to think.
This country was built on violence. We're a very violent country, and it's just undeniable that that's the case. And so I'm not, unfortunately, surprised that people are celebrating the use of violence. I'm not surprised that this young man thought that change could be accomplished through violence.
There are now fears we could see a copycat killer. I mean, throughout New York City, the NYPD is now investigating who put up these wanted posters of other insurance CEOs who are, quote, denying medical care for corporate profit. Reportedly, Mangione was suffering with a back problem. But is he also suffering from mental delusions, perhaps an undiagnosed mental illness? For example, the average onset of schizophrenia for men is in their early 20s. Did Mangione's parents and friends notice he'd been off recently? They said he was radio silent for 6 months prior to this. Did they try to get him help? But once again, our mental health system failed him like it fails so many millions of other Americans. Could this incident be another damning indictment of our mental health system, like we saw in the case of Jordan Neely, the deranged homeless man arrested 42 times and was in and out of psychiatric hospitals and unfortunately died in that subway car because he threatened to kill everyone in his path, and Daniel Penny had to subdue him? Think about this. If we saw someone lying in the streets, right, with a cancerous tumor protruding from their body, and that person was being denied care, there would be national outrage. We'd say, what kind of country is this? So then explain to me, why is it acceptable that we allow our mentally ill to slowly decay on the streets and just wait for them to commit violence?
That's Newsmax host Lidia Curanaj, and the McDonald's employee in Pennsylvania who tipped off the FBI, the tip that eventually led to the arrest, is now owed a big reward for the information leading to the arrest. The FBI and Crime Stoppers said during the search for the suspect that a reward of up to $60,000 was being offered to anyone with a tip leading to a break in the case. The McDonald's employee's tip led to the arrest of Mangione, who was like eating a hash brown or something. Officials said exactly who will get the reward or share the reward is still being determined. And the Illinois man charged with a misdemeanor assault after grabbing and shaking the hand of South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace has entered a not guilty plea. I told you about that story the other day. 33-year-old James McIntyre of Chicago was arrested following the encounter back on Tuesday. Nancy Mace said President-elect Trump called her to check in on her after the incident. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York, a Democrat, told reporters that no member of Congress should be accosted or assaulted or attacked based on their political beliefs, calling the incident very troubling. Nancy Mace says that James McIntyre is transgender, and she has been threatened and now attacked after pushing legislation to keep transgenders out of bathrooms on Capitol Hill. By now, you know the whole story. And on Capitol Hill today, the Senate is pushing for a vote on legislation that would provide full Social Security benefits to millions of people who receive a pension. If that's you, you should pay close attention. The legislation that they're trying to get a vote on would affect you as well as surviving spouses who also receive a pension. Surviving spouses of people who are getting Social Security. This could be big news for a lot of people, so pay close attention. And the demise of MSNBC is continuing, as multiple reports from multiple sources say Morning Schmo's audience is still mad about him and Mika meeting with Trump, and Rachel Maddow has been blowing up in a bad way all week on social media, even from some liberals, for suggesting some sort of a connection between the United Healthcare CEO killer and Blake Masters, Donald Trump's rumored pick for ATF director. On Wall Street, stocks opened in the green after closing lower yesterday. On the business page, if you have YouTube TV, your monthly bill is about to go up. Happy New Year. Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, which owns YouTube, announced that they're jacking up the price of its TV streaming service to $82.99 a month. That's up $10 from $72.99 a month. Prior to that, it was $62.99 a month. So if you have YouTube TV and then probably a couple other streaming services at $10, $12 a month each, and then, of course, you have to have Wi-Fi to run the whole thing, you know, you're paying like $200 a month like you were for cable anyway. All right, be sure to keep up with all the news and breaking developments on Newsmax, N2, and Newsmax.com today and throughout the weekend, beginning each and every day with Wake Up America and then Wake Up America Weekend Edition. Bianca De La Garza, American Agenda, Carl Higbie, Rob Schmidt, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, The Right Squad. Tomorrow, America Right Now with Tom Basili. Saturday Report, Saturday Agenda, Sunday Agenda, the Gorka Reality Check, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Be careful out there. Friday the 13th. Have a fantastic weekend. Let's go, Miami! And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Relentlessly slowing the spread of the stupid every day. It's the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, it's Rob Carson. My podcast is about leading-edge commentary and opinion, great guests, and the biggest political comedy in the country. My satire was featured on the Rush Limbaugh program for over a decade, and now it's fresh and new and on my podcast. It's not just another desk-pounding conservative tirade. It's about entertaining, informing, and motivating. Patriotism and hope. You don't need more stress in your life. You need to feel good and, dare I say, even laugh. Subscribe and download at your favorite podcast platform or go to newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.